Small Arm Solutions. Late last year, Glock had introduced a couple more models to their new lineup of their Gen 5. Earlier in the year, around January, is when they introduced the introduction of the Glock Gen 5. And probably the summertime is when they introduced the new Gen 17 and Gen 19 Gen 5 MOS. Now, I originally had one of the first Gen 5 pistols that came out. Very, very, very nice pistol. Late last year, I was provided for testing evaluation the two new MOS pistols, the Gen 5 17 and 19. Well, when I saw the Gen 5 MOS, I thought to myself, this has definitely got all the goodies on it that the latest and greatest has. I said I had to have it. So I actually sold my Gen 5 standard and bought this one instead. And the major differences is like you saw last year with the Gen 4, you had a limited number of pistols that were manufactured in the summer of the Gen 4 where you had the side serrations. And that was one of the modifications to it. Well, what we have here is also a limited run, which has these front slide serrations, and it also has the cutout for the red dot. Now, as you're going to see from some of the range footage, we shot this first without any kind of red dot sight on it as well, and then we were able to receive for test and evaluation a Viper red dot by Vortex. Now, I do want to say something about Vortex. This is the first time I've had a chance to use any Vortex optics. I got a couple of test and evaluation units of some of the regular scopes, some of the red dots, and this the smaller one for the pistol. So this was our first time with the Vortex optics, and we'll take a look at that in a few minutes. So as the pistol came, like all the Glock Gen 4s and Gen 5s, you have additional back straps. I put the medium one on here just because I have larger size hands. And you also have what we see here for the MRO. You have several different plates for the modular locking system. MOS is modular optic systems. And you have various plates here for attaching various types of red dots. So I have the one here that I had installed. I had removed the original plate that was on top, inserted this one, locked it down, and then the Viper went right up on top, and it was screwed in place as solid as can be. So those are basically what comes with all the MOS pistols. Now, Glock has had other MOS pistols as well, but this is the first time they had the Gen 5 with the MOS for the Model 17. What we're going to do is we're going to go over a little bit of the Gen 5 stuff before we get totally into the MOS features of it. Now, the Gen 5 had a lot of changes from the original pistol. Now, the Gen 5, many people looked at it and they thought that it was just it was the same pistol as the previous four versions, and that's not the case at all. One of the most important features that changed was the barrel. Now, the barrel has always been a polygon shallow rifling, which basically gives you a better built to barrel fit, which gives you increased velocity, and also the fact there's no sharp lands and grooves in there. It doesn't wear out. The chances of anybody wearing one of these barrels out is pretty much nil. Now, Glock has introduced a new barrel they call the Glock's Marksmanship Barrel. Now, what you have there is basically a leading edge that's put on to the rifling, which increases accuracy. Now, this is still a shallow rifling polygon barrel, so you still cannot use lead bullets in it. You will still get that heavy buildup of lead that'll eventually cause a overpressure and cause the gun to blow up. This is still used for jacketed ammunition only, but it gives you a slightly more accurate. It is noticeable as well, a slightly more accurate pistol. You also have an improved barrel crown here as well, so if it was dropped, there's no way that the barrel crown is going to be damaged. That was probably one of the most important features that was done. Some other was a little bit more on the cosmetic end. You see they got rid of the front finger grooves. They also give you a more flared magazine well, which makes it a little bit easier for low-level light type magazine insertion. You also have an improvement in the area underneath here, so it's a lot more comfortable for your finger when you hold it. Now we get into the sights on here. This is like any Glock. It comes with many different kinds of sights. The ones I have on here are the Ameriglow. You have the two tritium vials on the rear, and in the front you have a tritium vial surrounded by a fluorescent orange dot. This happens to be my favorite sights on the pistols these days. I do like having that the orange in the front. It makes it that much easier for you to see very, very quickly. The rest is manufactured in the inside. First is looking at the slide. You actually have a preview of the Gen 5 with the G42 and G43. As you can see, we have an improved firing pin safety. This was a more durable and more reliable system that you see on the frame. Now, also, you have the recoil spring. This recoil spring is not compatible with that of the Gen 4. The only part that you'll find in this pistol that has any compatibility at all with any of the previous generations is the magazine release. Other than that, this pistol has been completely redesigned. It has its own parts. This is slightly longer than that of the original first four generations. Now, looking at the frame, we have several changes as well. They also got rid of the first pin. There's actually 2 pins that were used on the Gen 4 and Gen 3s for the 17, where you had a lock pin that went through the top, one here and one here. This was called the first pin. The frame has gotten rid of that. Now, whether this will reappear on any of the other caliber Gen 5s when they come out, that remains to be seen. You also have a modification to the trigger return spring. The trigger return spring is the only part on the Glock that breaks. I have had several variations that I've done a lot of endurance testing on, and I did have one pistol, it was actually a Gen 2, that I did a 76,000 round endurance test on, and the only part that ever broke was that spring, and I went through 2 of those, if I recall, during that time. They basically switched around the location of the spring, so instead of it coming into to the rear, it comes in from the front. So it's a more durable. There's a complete redesign of the housing. You also have the ambidextrous slide stop. And you also have a modification to the locking block. So what you have here is a complete redesigned pistol. There's also a change in the frame as well, the way that it's molded. So you have a completely different gun here rather than many people will say this is the same thing. Now, reassembly like any Glock. Drop it in place like so. And there we have it. There's also been a modification to the magazine. Now, the magazine has not changed in the way that it functions. What Glock has done with all the Gen 5s, they've given you an orange follower, and they've also given you more of a little bit of a bevel on here, so it's less likely to snag. These parts are actually available to purchase separately if you want to upgrade your current magazines. Now, the one thing I do want to address is people have complained. To me, I've heard people say that why has Glock only got 9mm pistols in the Gen 5? And the answer is quite simple. The pendulum of law enforcement has swung from going to 40 to 45 back to 9mm. With the advent of new ammunition, such as the HST, the Gold Dot 2, and so forth, there's really not a benefit of going to the higher calibers. When you can go with a 9mm, you can go with less recoil, you can go with a narrower grip, and you can go with a higher capacity magazine. It's what's being bought by Glock right now from law enforcement and, of course, military. So their effort has been going into to 9mm updates, because you've seen the Gen 5. You've seen the 17, 19, the 34, I believe. You're now seeing the G42X and the G48. So that's pretty much why you're seeing mostly 9mm, because that's what's in demand at the moment. So we do hope to see, hopefully this year we'll see some other calibers coming out. But right now, this is where the priority for Glock is. So now we're going to get a little bit more into the MOS. Well, basically what the MOS is the slide is pre-cut, so you can place one of these red dot type sights. Now, why would you want to put an electrical sight which is operated by a battery on a combat pistol? Now, if you look at this particular sight, this is the Viper by Vortex, you're looking at 150 hours on the highest setting, and you're looking at over 30,000 hours on a more of a moderate setting of illumination. Now, you always risk having a battery on an optic for a combat or a police pistol that it might go out when you don't need it. Now, there is an option for somebody who's in that situation by utilizing the suppressor sights, which sits up higher, where you'd be able to get a co-witness. I don't have that on this particular one. This is not something I'm going to be carrying into combat, so I didn't really bother with it, with changing the sights up. Plus, I like the American sights too much, and I'm sure this will come off and go on some other pistols in the near future as well. So that's really what the main difference is on the Gen 5 MOS, is you do have the front serrations, and you do have the cutout for the sight. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the optic. This is the Vortex Viper optic. It's a 1-power magnification. It has, I believe, is unlimited. And your maximum elevation and windage is 120 MOA. It is a 6 MOA dot. It weighs only about 1.1 ounces in an aluminum body that's anodized black. The battery is a CR2032 lithium battery. As we already said, that you have a 14-hour auto shutoff, 150 hours in the highest setting, and a lower setting up to 30,000 hours. MSRP for this is only $329. So it's a very reasonably cost sight. It also has the adjustment for elevation, for windage, and on the back you have 2 locking screws. So basically, after you get it zeroed in, you can pull that off and you can lock those screws down so it can't move. Now, I really haven't bothered doing that due to the fact that I shoot a lot of different types of ammunition, and that will affect your point of aim, point of impact. However, I shot over 400 rounds with this thing zeroed, and I had no change in point of impact at all. So the overall quality of this Viper so far has been excellent. Again, we've only had about 500 or so rounds through this one, and we're going to be working on it for as far as more and more rounds to see how well that it holds up. So again, getting back to why would you want this? When you utilize a red dot sight like this, you are only looking at one aiming point rather than trying to line up two of your iron sights. What that means is you get a much, much quicker sight picture. It also means it's easy to use both eyes. When you have both eyes, you have peripheral vision. So it drastically speeds up your target acquisition time and your engagement time, as well as your follow-up time. So that does offer a lot to military and law enforcement. But the one pink elephant in the room is the fact that it's a battery. To do this, you would have to have constant attention to batteries. Cold weather, you have to definitely make sure that the batteries didn't get drained up any quicker, that it would affect it. But for law enforcement, anybody who will be using this thing for actual duty use or combat use, you definitely would want to have the backup sights on that were for a sound suppressor. So just in case that did go out, you would still have a pistol that is useful. You would still be able to engage using the iron sights. So then what we're going to do now is we're going to take this to the range and we're going to see how it shoots. First, we're going to fire without any optics, and then we're going to fire it with the Vortex Viper installed. Well, of course, utilizing no sights, the pistol was excellent. I'm getting away from doing a lot of the, the zeroing, the precision shooting due to the fact these are combat pistols. They're not designed to put bullets through the same holes. They're designed to poke holes in bad guys and help have them bleed out. They're not designed to have, to fire one bullet on top of the other. But it shot quite well. My groups were within a couple inches at 25 yards. But I will say, when I put on the Vortex, it was able to perform surgery. Out to 25 yards, wherever that dot was, as long as you did your job, they went where they were supposed to. And I could definitely say for sure that it sped up my target acquisition. I was able to fire more rapidly, more accurately. So I definitely see where the hype is. And for somebody who's shooting competitively, it gives you a severe time advantage. So this pistol so far has had well over 1,000 rounds through it. Well over 1,000 rounds, 500 at least without the Viper in place, and 500 width. It's typical Glock, works like a Swiss watch, no malfunctions whatsoever. This pistol has seen a lot of different types of ammunition as well, particularly a lot of 9mm NATO, a lot of the new SIG M17 plus P, which is basically the 9mm NATO cartridge. And for as far as hollow points, we've done a lot with the HST, which is my favorite load for 9mm, which I carry in my pistols. I've had some older Hydra-Shock, I've had some Gold Dot, I've had Hornady Critical Duty, I've had some Hornady HST, some of the SIG V-Crown. The pistol will fire anything that's put into it. So for any of you guys who are looking for a modern pistol or a modern Glock, and you want to have the ability to put the MRO or a red dot on there, the G17 Gen 5 is definitely your way to go. It's definitely the most modern Glock 17 that's out there for the Gen 5, having every feature that you could possibly want on it. I happen to like the front slide serrations. It looks neat. I like it. And does allow you to be able to grab in the front if you don't want to grab a hold of your rear sight here. To my understanding from all the manufacturers say you can grab it from the red dot's not going to hurt it, but I tend to like to go from the front, just not touching it. It has all those features, and for as far as the iron sights, as we said previously, these are the Ameriglow. You can get steel sights, you can get regular Glock Trijicon sights, you can get the regular polymer sights, or you can get any of the aftermarket sights that go on Glocks, and they'll go right on it. You can see from the Ameriglow that they sit back a little bit further because you do have a cutout for the red dot. They had to move the sight rearward. You can see that it hangs off a little bit. So you probably would have that with any kind of a sight that you would put on there. It would hang off a little bit. Regular Glock 17 doesn't do that because the fact that you have it move forward, you don't have the cut for the red dot. So again, I was very, I hate getting rid of my original Gen 5, but you know what? To be able to have the opportunity to do this, it was worth getting rid of my original Gen 5 for this one. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, and even better, share. Thank you.